Twilight Fights Starlight for Eternity by Diamond Aura.
We could be stuck doing this for all eternity, Twilight said. That's fine with me, Starlight responded.
Starlight never thought that Twilight was actually being serious. Starlight rushed towards the nearest restaurant. She needed some food to steal. Twilight wasn't cutting her any slack. She was so hungry, she could have eaten Rainbow Dash to prevent the rainbow. She wasn't serious, of course. Starlight had standards. No pony in their right mind would ever do a thing like that, no matter how hungry they were. She would sooner have starved to death. Starlight charged up her horn and blasted a hole through the window of Muffin Stop, jumping through and running to the back. Ponies she didn't bother looking at screamed at her sudden appearance. The manager pony charged out of her office and demanded that Starlight stand down. Starlight disregarded the request, shattering the display glass covering the muffins, for which the place was named. Starlight reached a hoof forward to grab as many as she could. A flash of light enveloped her. She was back where she started.
"To Tartarus with you!"
Starlight yelled in frustration, charging an attack to launch at Twilight. Twilight looked worse for wear. Her mane was frazzled from the countless horrible futures she had visited. Her wings drooped at her sides, and Spike only barely clasped the time travel spell. Despite that, though, Twilight's eyes were full of unyielding determination. Starlight threw an explosive beam at Twilight in an attempt to wound her. If Twilight had to heal, then that could be enough time for Starlight to grab something to eat. Twilight redirected the explosion with ease. She had given up on trying to keep events on course many tries ago. Anything she did always stopped the rainbow. But what she did know was that Starlight was getting tired. Starlight couldn't keep fighting forever. And once she became too tired to do anything, Twilight could return to the present, even if it meant that Starlight would die trying to stop her.
"Come on, Starlight," Twilight said exhaustedly. "You can't outlast me. You may have studied magic just as much as I have, but you will never overcome the natural advantage I have of being an alicorn. I will defeat you," Starlight panted. "Even if I can't crush your body, I can still crush your spirit. As long as I keep going, you'll never see your friends ever again." "That's where you're wrong, Starlight," Twilight said, ignoring the fact that Rainbow Dash was stopping when she had seen the deflected explosion. "Even though the worlds I visit are different every time, I more often than not meet my friends in some form. They may be completely different from how I know them, but it just reminds me that even in the bleakest futures, they keep going on. It gives me the strength to continue against you."
Rainbow Dash had stopped flying for too long. The time travel portal opened above Twilight, while Spike clutched Twilight's mane in one claw and the spell in the other.
"You can't win, Starlight. I will never give up."
And with that, Twilight was sucked up into yet another world. Starlight was tired from her attempted robbery of the shop. Of course, everything she had done had just been reset when Twilight summoned her back. Muffin Stop had never been attacked by a hunger-crazed unicorn. But Starlight still felt each passing moment weigh down on her. Starlight told herself that she was just as determined as Twilight, that she too would never give up, and that no matter what Twilight said, she would outlast her. Starlight could only hope that Twilight would get attacked by something terrible when she arrived in the new future. Twilight would survive, of course. She always did. But all Starlight needed was a little bit of time. She needed food. She needed rest. She needed to recharge her magic. All the offensive attacks Starlight had been using finally were taking a more permanent toll on her.
"Screw her," Starlight grumbled. "I don't care what she thinks. I will beat her."
Light flashed around Starlight. Time was reset again. Starlight let out an "Ugh!" in exasperation. Twilight stood in front of Starlight. Instead of being on the attack, however, she simply waited. Waited and stared. Spike yawned in exhaustion.
"You're never going to beat me," Starlight said.
Twilight didn't even bother responding. She simply stared at Starlight. Blinked, then more staring.
"Nothing you do is working," Starlight insisted.
Twilight took a deep breath.
"You'll never stop me,"
Starlight said in anger.
"Just keep talking, Starlight,"
Twilight said, almost casually. "The longer you talk, the more you wither away. I have so much magic on my side." Twilight's magical aura surrounded Spike, giving him a small boost of energy. Starlight's stomach rumbled. She almost envied Spike. At least he could be given energy. Starlight tried replicating Twilight's spell. Twilight reached out with her own aura and blocked the spell from taking effect.
"Thanks for the juice,"
Twilight smiled. Her eyes became slightly less tired in appearance, and she brought her wings back up to their rightful places at her sides.
That's cheating!"
Starlight felt ready to collapse.
"With the future of Equestria in the balance,"
Twilight said almost ceremoniously,
"I would think that anything I didn't do would be unfair to every pony whose lives you would destroy."
Starlight hated Twilight more than ever. Starlight launched the momentum-stopping spell at one of the bullies this time. Rainbow Dash stopped her quick downward descent to laugh at the suddenly motionless bully.
"Not so skilled, are we now?"
Rainbow gloated. This isn't me!" The bully squirmed, trying to resist. "Something's stopping me from moving!" Rainbow just continued to laugh. Twilight simply shook her head.
"Whatever, Starlight. The more you try to win, the more you wear yourself down, and the closer I get to going home."
"Give up, Starlight," Spike added in a bored voice.
"Shut up!" Starlight screamed. "Nothing you say is going to change my mind. You broke my friendships, and no matter what happens, I will break yours!"
Twilight looked at Spike and shrugged. "One more world?" she asked. "One more world," Spike said. Right on schedule, the time travel portal opened up over Twilight and Spike. Spike clutched the spell tightly, but Twilight simply combed a hoof through her mane to try and straighten it out a bit. They were sucked up without any further hassle. Starlight attempted to use Twilight's energy spell again, but quickly realized Twilight had blocked it completely. She cursed and tried levitating herself towards the muffin shop, but she was too exhausted now. She felt her magic falter and threatened to drop her. No, she decided. She was going to have to stop using such energy-consuming magic. Instead, Starlight tried to break into a gallop to reach the restaurant by hoof. However, she was so tired that it ended up being more of a slow walk. It was almost a straightforward path. It wouldn't take that much longer. Starlight got in front of Muffin Stop. Rather than attempting to rob it again, she simply walked through the front door. She walked up to the counter, went back where the cashier stood, acting as if she had a very important reason to be back there, and promptly levitated a muffin up.
Miss, what are you doing? The cashier mare asked uncomfortably.
Starlight ignored the comment and moved the muffin to her mouth, feeling the delicious, moist muffin begin to crumble onto her taste buds. She closed her eyes and moaned at the taste of food. It had felt like an eternity had passed since she had... The muffin was gone, just like that. Starlight opened her eyes in disbelief. She wasn't floating the muffin anymore. It wasn't even in her mouth. It had vanished before she could even swallow. Twilight was grinning and chuckling.
Aw, what an adorable face you were just making, Starlight. Making out with some pony while I was gone. You're a sick monster!
Starlight groaned, her stomach rumbling at the chance of almost having food. She felt like she was going to be sick. She didn't even feel like responding to Twilight's degrading comment. What kind of imagination did Twilight have anyway?
Come on, I'd love to know who the special stallion is.
Twilight sounded almost happy.
Too bad he already forgot, though, isn't it?
I was trying to eat some food, you perverted princess! Starlight's voice was full of loathing.
Aw, why didn't you say so in the first place?
Twilight mock pouted.
You and Hayburgers make such a cute couple.
Starlight was enraged. In a scream of anger, she threw her crystallizing spell at Twilight. Twilight dodged with ease. The cloud Starlight hit suddenly crystallized, its sudden weight dropping it down. Starlight launched another attack, with the same result. Twilight dodged every move with acrobatic grace. The section of clouds behind Twilight was now much too heavy. It ripped the clouds connecting it to the rest of Cloudsdale and fell downwards, directly in the path of Rainbow Dash. Dash, as quick as she was, had too much momentum to stop in time, and collided directly into the cloudstone structure. Shouts of "Rainbow Crash!" were heard from below.
Don't tire yourself too fast.
Twilight smiled. It was obvious that she had a distinct advantage over Twilight at this point. Starlight panted in exhaustion. She knew that things didn't look good for her. Despite her intense hatred for Twilight, her simple lack of energy was stopping her resolve to beat Twilight at her own game.
This is what you call irony, Starlight.
Twilight smiled.
You create a spell that is so powerful it can conquer the bounds of reality for an unlimited period of time. Yet, because of your supposed genius, you can't escape. What did you intend to do if you did stop me? Suppose I even died in one of these worlds. If I didn't come back to reset time, you would have no way to return to our world without this scroll.
Spike held it up, as if to clarify which scroll Twilight was talking about. Starlight grimaced in anger.
Eventually, Twilight continued, you'll just meet the same future you send me to, but you'll be forced to take the slow path. It would be years before you would come across me again, and that would require you to take the scroll before anything happened to it. You're wrong, Twilight, Starlight argued back. I wrote the spell. I can just write it again. I suppose,
Twilight shrugged, as the portal opened up above her again.
But not in your current condition. As long as I keep coming back, your own spell will summon you back here with me. So just try it. Go back to our world. But if I, or any pony for that matter, uses this scroll, you'll just get pulled straight on back here, to this moment.
Spike shook his head. Truly a masterful plan, Starlight. And with that, they were gone. Starlight hated Twilight. Despite her intense need for revenge, this was just getting to be too much. Starlight collapsed onto the clouds, closing her eyes as silent tears began to fall. Her body shook uncontrollably. She never would have let Twilight see her this way before, but everything she was doing was just being wasted. It was taking a huge toll on her emotional state, combined with Twilight's terrible mocking. She hated Twilight. Light flashed around her once again. Time was reset, but Starlight wasn't. She remained in her silent, tearful convulsions as Twilight reappeared. Time was reset, but Starlight wasn't. She remained in her silent, tearful convulsions as Twilight appeared. "You're weak," Twilight chided, standing just above Starlight's shaking body. "You're a failure." Spike grinned maliciously. Hi. Starlight sputtered and gasped to control her breathing. "I hate you." Emotions, Twilight spouted casually. "So much feeling for someone as pathetic as you." "I think it's getting to be too much for her," Spike added with a cackle. He jumped off of Twilight's back and landed on Starlight's side, knocking the wind out of the already gasping unicorn. Tears flowed uncontrollably at this point. Starlight couldn't stand the pain. "Stop it!" Starlight choked out. "I think she wants more of a challenge," Spike laughed. He lifted up Starlight's mane and began to breathe fire against her coat. Starlight gasped and screamed in pain, fire burning at her neck, trying to fling Spike away from her with a dying fragment of magic. Spike was stopped, but he and Twilight simply laughed at her tortured state. "I think it's time we stopped toying with her," Twilight cackled, using magic to turn Starlight's face up towards her. Then, in unison with Spike, their eyes flashed bright red, screaming, "And finish the job!" The sky went black all at once. Jets of flame flying towards her face as Twilight's hooves came rushing towards her exposed skull. Starlight woke up, screaming. She panted and looked around. She was in the Castle of Friendship, Twilight's castle. Starlight felt her tears roll down her face as she shook uncontrollably. "Just a bad dream," she told herself. That didn't stop it from feeling any less real. She could almost feel the burns covering her body as Twilight crushed. No, she wouldn't think of that. Starlight sobbed silently and hugged herself tightly, trying to calm herself down. That hadn't happened, she told herself. Twilight wasn't like that. Twilight had befriended her, despite all that she had done to her and her friends. The only reason she was even here in this bed, instead of spying on Twilight's personal life, was because Twilight was such a good pony. The door opened suddenly, Twilight's concerned face looking at Starlight. "Are you all right?" "I heard screaming." Her voice trailed off as Starlight's silent sobs suddenly came out with full force. Starlight couldn't bear to look at Twilight. She knew that Twilight was kind. She was a friend. But she, Starlight, was supposed to be strong. She never let anything get her into a state like this. And yet, here she was, crying uncontrollably in front of her. Starlight felt a set of hooves around her neck, giving her a warm embrace. Starlight sobbed and hugged Twilight back, crying into her mane. Twilight slowly stroked Starlight's mane. "Shh," she said quietly. It's all right. I'm here for you." Twilight's soothing words slowly drew Starlight back into her senses. Despite her slowing sobs and tears, Starlight held on to Twilight with continuous strength. She never wanted Twilight to leave her. The two ponies continued their embrace until Starlight's sobs were reduced to sniffles. Twilight stroked Starlight's mane in a comforting, mother-like gesture, occasionally saying, "Shh," and other calming phrases. Starlight's tears continued to flow, however. It was so scary," Starlight sputtered out. A nightmare." Twilight hugged Starlight even tighter. "It's all right. That's all it was, Starlight. Just a bad dream." Starlight sobbed again. But it felt so real." "Shh." Twilight stroked Starlight's mane again. "You're okay. It's not real." Starlight's tears finally started to slow. Twilight's calming gestures were helping her finally calm down. Starlight finally got more control over her breathing again. Twilight moved her head back to look Starlight in the eyes. "Are you all right?" She smiled with genuine compassion. Starlight shakily nodded. "Do you want to talk about it?" Starlight suddenly felt conflicted. On the one hoof, she didn't want Twilight to leave her. She didn't feel like she could keep it together if she was by herself again. But on the other hoof, she wasn't sure if she wanted to talk to Twilight about what had scared her so much. Starlight's tearful, conflicted eyes were all Twilight needed to see before she once again embraced Starlight in a hug. Starlight gripped Twilight's neck and didn't let go. "It's okay, Starlight," Twilight said soothingly. She released Starlight and climbed onto the bed and sat next to her. "You can tell me when you're ready." Twilight embraced Starlight once more. Starlight hugged back and leaned her weight against Twilight. All she really wanted right now was the support of a good friend. Twilight was happy to oblige.